All right, what's going on, everybody? We are back for another video. And I know I told you guys I didn't want to make this whole channel about news, but there's some kind of news that I think is relatively important. And we're going to take a dive into that today. And what that news is a new novel coming to Final Fantasy VII in January of 2026, which will, of course, be part of the 7R canon. Let's jump into it. So here we have confirmation from Final Fantasy VII Square Enix, and they're talking about a brand new novel called Dear Destiny. And on this cover, we can see Tifa's here, Aerith's here, and we see the Buster Sword, kind of symbolizing Zack for Aerith and Cloud for Tifa. And this is kind of where a lot of ideas could come from. And if you've read TOTP, what you'll realize is that some of the story almost feels like it's unsaid. So from TOTP, what we do learn is that there is a story from Tifa's perspective, from Aerith's perspective, and it goes essentially from Tifa as a young girl, or up until she's on Costa del Sol, the boat with Aerith. And Aerith's part goes from when she was a young girl up until the Costa del Sol boat. Now, what could be the story that they're looking to tell us with this new novel? For me, it's pretty clear it's going to be a time period from Costa del Sol, so the ending of the last book, moving all the way up until Aerith's death at the Forgotten Capital. What we did learn from the director is that they're also going to be talking about Cloud's history with Shinra being an infantryman. And I think this is a great idea to go into further detail, further lore about what happened, who Cloud was around, who impacted him the most, Zack, obviously. And one of the greatest things, or one of the biggest things that I've kind of realized with the whole Final Fantasy lore of TOTP was an Easter egg that happened in an interview a long time ago, a couple years ago now, where the directors were asked about, or the devs were asked about what's happening with the Final Fantasy VII story. And the developer kind of answered, there's an angel involved, or the Japanese kind of play on words of ANGEAL, angel, very similar. So this is kind of bringing forth into the fandom a whole bunch of ideas about ANGEAL coming back in Final Fantasy VII are in the next iteration of the game or in the future iterations of the game, because like I said before, years ago, Final Fantasy VII Part 3 is not the end of the game. We have to resolve Weiss, we have to resolve Wutai, we have to resolve the proto-material, we have to resolve a whole bunch of other stuff that you can look at my other videos called Emerging the Timelines to get a deeper lore understanding of where we're going with the story. But for this specific story, I thought that it was very interesting that we start talking about the idea of ANGEAL saving Aerith at the church, when I always thought it was Tseng. And I know this could seem maybe a little bit kind of out there, or maybe it was already discussed or not discussed by us, but for those here at Fungi Film Reviews who haven't kind of had the idea or it kind of churn inside of you, is Tseng was responsible for Aerith ever since she was a child. Tseng has an affinity for Aerith. And we can see this in the original game when he gives her the keystone at the Temple of the Ancients. And we could see it again in 7R series, because when we do see Tseng and see Aerith react to Tseng's supposed death, we can see how heartfelt she is. And she's like, he was always there for me. He was one of my only friends. And I think they actually developed that whole storyline when we go into Ever Crisis. And like I said, Ever Crisis is merging into Final Fantasy VII-R, regardless if you think that it's not important, it's just a gacha game. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis First Soldier is merged into Final Fantasy VII-R series. And in that game, we see a flashback of Aerith, because Aerith and Tifa both talk about picnics, especially even in TOTP. And we get that kind of realized in the flashback scene of Aerith as a child going for a picnic in Midgar. And we see Tseng as kind of always hanging around her, and some kind of junkies or kind of troublemakers start to beef with Aerith, and he kind of eliminates them. Also, to kind of further this whole Tseng is always looking after Aerith, even when we're at the playground where Aerith and Zack are selling the carts, and Zack is finally going back to meet Aerith and say, hey, I have to go on this final mission, which is the Nibelheim mission. And he says, Tseng, make sure you look after her. So Tseng was always kind of there to protect her. And lastly, in TOTP, which is why I find it so strange that they're adding this kind of ANGEAL twist to what happened at the church, is that Faz meets up with Aerith, Elmira, they shoot him, he kind of dies or disappears in the shoulder, whatever, and she says, "Thank you for protecting me." And what I always thought about that scene, especially because it was a gunshot wound, that it was Tseng kind of always looking after her in the shadows. And for some reason, when I see the new information about the new book, it seems like a lot of people are kind of playing on, oh, Angeal might have saved her because Angeal was the kind of griffin dog that was overlooking her. And I really don't think that's the way they're going with the story. I think that if you use the elements of Sung's love for Aerith, guardianship, believing that in the promised land, believing on all the things that he did believe after he cut his hair off and declared his loyalty to Rufus, and then after shows up at Elmira's house saying, "We know where Aerith is. We're going to keep an eye on her." And the years go by, 5, 10 years, until she's a grown adult, grown woman. And I really think that that aspect of the Aerith and Tseng relationship is something that they should not retcon in this upcoming book. Obviously, I'm going to go with whatever the book kind of says to give the additional lore. I will always use the game as the ultimate canon, but I just want to get on here really quickly, talk about the news we got that there's going to be a new book, coming out on the 30th of January, 2026, which likely tells us they're starting the hype for the third part of the Final Fantasy VII R series, and likely that it's not going to be coming out until 2027, 2028. So keep that in mind. How did you feel about the new news? Are you going to buy this book, read it? Are you going to wait for the English version? Are you going to use AI to translate the Japanese version? And if you think I'm wrong about how Angeal versus Tseng saved Aerith at the church against Faz, let's argue about it in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Hey.